This is part 3 of the reproductive lectures, the reproductive system lectures. This is the second part of the female reproductive system. So, picking up where we left off last time, with the various parts of the female reproductive system, we have the vagina. This is a fibromuscular canal that's lined with the mucus that's going to extend from the body's exterior to the surface. It is going to be the receptacle for the penis during sexual intercourse, as well as the outlet for menstrual flow, and the passageway for childbirth. Situated between the urinary bladder and the rectum, the vagina is directed superiorly and posteriorly, where it's then going to attach to the uterus. The recesses, called the fornix around the vagina, are the vaginal attachments of the cervix. A recess called the fornix surrounds the vaginal attachment to the cervix. The mucosa of the vagina is going to be continuous with that of the mucosa of the uterus. Histologically speaking, it's going to consist of non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium, as well as areolar connective tissue that's going to lie in a series of transverse folds called rugae. The mucosa of the vagina is going to contain large stores of glycogen, and the decomposition of this glycogen is going to produce organic acids. This is going to cause a very acidic, or this is going to result in an acidic environment that's going to slow microbial growth. But as a drawback, it's going to be harmful to sperm. So in order to combat this, the alkaline components of semen, mainly from the seminal vesicles, are going to help to raise the pH of the fluid that's in the vagina, and this is going to increase the viability of the sperm once they've entered the vagina. The next layer of the vagina is the muscularis. This is composed of an outer circular layer and an inner longitudinal layer of smooth muscle. This allows the vagina to stretch during intercourse and childbirth. The adventita is a superficial layer of the vagina, and it's going to consist of areolar connective tissue. And the hymen is a thin fold of vascularized mucous membrane that is going to partially close the inferior end of the vagina. This is going to form a border around and partially close the inferior end of the vaginal opening to the exterior, which is called the vaginal orifice. So after its rupture, usually following the first sexual intercourse, it's only remnants of the hymen will remain. It is important to mention, however, that there are other reasons that the hymen can rupture that are not related to intercourse. Some contact sports, or very, excessive stretching, horseback riding, all of these things can cause the hymen to rupture on its own without having any sort of sexual intercourse. So that's just sort of an important thing to keep in mind. Up next, we have the vulva. This is also called the pudendum, and this refers to the external genitalia of the female. The vulva is composed of several different components. This is going to include the mons pubis, the labia minora, the labia majora, the clitoris, and the vestibule. And the vestibule is going to include several different things, including the hymen, the vaginal orifice, the external urethral orifice, as well as the openings to the opening of ducts for several different glands that are associated with the vulva. Anterior to the vaginal and urethral openings is going to be where we locate the mons pubis, and you can see that right here in our little animated picture. So this is going to be an elevation of adipose tissue that's covered by skin, as well as coarse pubic hair that's going to cushion the pubic symphysis. The mons pubis from that mons pubis, there's going to be two longitudinal folds of skin. This is the labia majora, and these are going to extend inferiorly and posteriorly. The labia majora are going to be covered by pubic hair and are also going to contain an abundance of adipose tissue, as well as sebaceous or oil glands and apocrine sudoriferous glands or sweat glands. The labia majora is going to be homologous with the scrotum. And remember, in this case, homologous means that they share an embryological that tissue shares an embryological origin, is how we're using that term, homologous. Medial to the labia majora are two smaller folds of the skin called the labia minora. And so unlike the labia majora, the labia minora is going to be devoid of any sort of pubic hair or fat, and this is going to have very few sudoriferous glands. However, they are going to contain still many sebaceous glands, which are going to produce antimicrobial substances and are also going to help to provide some lubrication during sexual intercourse. The labia minora is going to be homologous with the spongy urethra or the penile urethra in men. Next up, we have the all-important clitoris. This is a small cylindrical mass that's composed of two small erectile bodies, the corpora cavernosa, and numerous nerves and blood vessels. The clitoris is going to be located at the anterior junction of the labia minora. You can see that right there, the clitoris, as well as the labia majora out of in there, and the labia minora here. So the layer of skin that's going to cover the clitoris is going to be called the prepuce of the clitoris, which is, you can see here. And this is formed at the point where the labia minora unite and cover the body of the clitoris. The exposed portion of the clitoris is called the glans clitoris, and the clitoris is going to be homologous with the glans penis in males. So like the male structure, the clitoris is capable of enlargement upon tactile stimulation and is going to have a very important role in sexual excitement in females. So the next part of the vulva is the region that's between the labia minora. This is called the vestibules, or the vestibule. So if you've ever been to church and they say, we'll have coffee and refreshments in the vestibule after Mass, this basically means the lobby. So this is like the lobby of the vulva. So within the vestibules, we're going to have the hymen, if it's still present, as well as the vaginal orifice, the external urethral orifice, and the openings of the ducts of several different glands. So the vestibule is going to be homologous with the intermediate urethra that we see in males. So taking a quick look at the glands that are associated with the vestibule. First, we have the periurethral gland, or the Skene's gland. This is going to secrete mucus, and this gland is embedded. These glands are embedded in the wall of the urethra. These are going to be homologous with the prostate in men. Next, we have the greater vestibular gland, or the Bartholin's gland. This is going to also produce mucus, but it's going to do so during sexual arousal. This is going to help to provide lubrication. And this is homologous with the bulbal urethral gland in men. And then we also have the bulb of the vestibule. This is going to have two masses of erectile tissue that are going to become engorged during sexual arousal. And this is going to cause a narrowing of the vaginal orifice. This is going to apply pressure to the penis during intercourse. And this is homologous with the erectile tissue of the penis. Next, we have the perineum. This is a diamond-shaped area that's medial to the thighs and buttocks of both men and women, males and females. It's going to contain the external genitalia and the anus. The perineum is bound anteriorly by the pubic symphysis, and then laterally by the ischial tuberosities, and posteriorly by the coccyx. A transverse line drawn across between the ischial tuberosities is going to divide the perineum into an anterior urogenital triangle that's going to contain the external genitals, and then a posterior anal triangle that's going to contain the anus. So here, just for your studying delights, is a table looking at the homologous structures between the male and the female reproductive systems. Next, the last major part of the of the female reproductive system, of the female anatomy, is the mammary gland. There are two of these, and these are located in each of the two breasts. There are two mammary glands, one for each breast, and these are going to be modified sudoriferous glands that are responsible for producing milk. Mammary glands are going to contain between 15 and 30 lobes, and each lobe is going to contain lobules. And this is where you're going to have those milk secreting glands called alveoli. All right, so we can see our lobules containing those alveoli, and each breast is going to have a nipple that's going to contain a lactiferous duct where milk is going to emerge, and then the skin around the nipple, which you can see here, is called the areola. So, looking at the female reproductive cycle, and this is a really big part of female, this is an important part of the female reproductive system, because this is going to change monthly or throughout the month, and this is how women can become pregnant. Non-pregnant females are going to experience cyclical changes in the ovaries and the uterus that are going to last for approximately 1 month. The cycle is going to involve oogenesis as well as the preparation by the uterus to receive a fertilized ovum. The ovarian cycle is going to include changes that occur during and after maturation of the oocyte, and then the uterine cycle is going to involve changes to the endometrium that are going to prepare it for implantation of a developing embryo. The general term for the female reproductive cycle the general term of the female reproductive cycle is going to encompass both the ovarian and the uterine cycles, as well as any hormonal changes that are responsible for regulating them. It's also going to be these hormones are also going to regulate these cyclical changes in the breasts as well as in the cervix. So, looking at this female reproductive cycle, if fertilization does not occur, then ovarian hormones are going to wane, are going to decrease, and this is going to cause the stratum functionalis of that endometrium to slough off. This is going to be when you menstruate. So, looking at our feedback loop for the hormonal control of our reproductive cycle. It's going to start with gonadotropin-releasing hormones. These are going to be secreted, again, by our hypothalamus that are going to control the ovarian and uterine cycles. Our gonadotropin-releasing hormone is going to stimulate the release of our gonadotrophins, specifically follicle-stimulating hormone, as well as luteinizing hormone. This is going to be secreted from the anterior pituitary. The follicle-stimulating hormone is going to initiate follicular growth, while the luteinizing hormone is going to stimulate further development of those ovarian follicles. In addition to this, both luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone are going to stimulate the ovarian follicles to secrete estrogen. Luteinizing hormone is going to stimulate the theca cells of our developing follicle to produce androgens. And under the influence of follicle-stimulating hormone, the androgens are going to be taken up by the granulosa cells of the follicle and are then going to be converted into estrogen. At about mid-cycle, halfway through this cycle, the luteinizing hormone is going to trigger ovulation to occur, and it's then going to promote the formation of the corpus luteum. So stimulated by that luteinizing hormone, the corpus luteum is going to produce and secrete estrogen, progesterone, relaxin, and inhibin. Estrogens are going to have several important functions in the body, especially in the whole female reproductive cycle. For starters, they're going to promote the development and maintenance of the female reproductive structures, as well as secondary sexual characteristics and the breasts. Second, the estrogen is going to increase protein anabolism, and it's going to help to build strong bones. This is why postmenopausal women are often at greater risk of osteoporosis, because this decrease in estrogen has left them lacking in the bone building department there. Estrogen is also going to help to lower blood cholesterol, and it's going to moderate levels of estrogen in the blood are also going to inhibit the release of gonadotropin-releasing hormone by the hypothalamus and secretion of luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone by the anterior pituitary gland. Other hormones that are important in the female reproductive cycle are going to include progesterone. This is going to work with estrogen to prepare that endometrium for implantation and the mammary glands for milk synthesis. There's also a small quantity of relaxin that's being produced each month that's going to be helpful in relaxing the uterus. By inhibiting contractions, this is going to make it easier for a fertilized ovum to implant within the uterus. And then during pregnancy, relaxin is also going to relax the pubic symphysis, and it's going to help to dilate the uterine cervix to help to facilitate delivery so that that baby can squeeze on out of mom. Inhibin is our last of the main hormones that we'll talk about for the female reproductive system. This is going to inhibit the secretion of follicle-stimulating hormone and gonadotropin-releasing hormone, as well as, to a lesser extent, our luteinizing hormone. It is this might be important in decreasing secretion of follicle-stimulating hormone as well as luteinizing hormone towards the end of that uterine cycle. So, here we see the negative feedback loops for the various hormones that are associated with the female reproductive cycle and how these hormones are going to impact that reproductive cycle. There's a really nice image here where follicle-stimulating hormone is going to stimulate both the initial growth of our ovarian follicle as well as the continued development of that ovarian follicle, as well and their secretion of estrogen and inhibin. Luteinizing hormone is also going to be involved in this development of this follicle-stimulating hormone. Luteinizing hormone is also going to stimulate this development of that ovarian follicle. And luteinizing hormone is also going to secrete luteinizing hormone is also going to stimulate the formation of the corpus luteum. This is going to result in the secretion of progesterone as well as estrogen, relaxin, inhibin, all by the corpus luteum. So it's also important to remember that both this ovarian follicle and the luteus or corpus luteum are going to secrete hormones themselves. So the ovarian follicle is going to secrete estrogen and inhibin, while the corpus luteum is going to secrete all four hormones with estrogen, inhibin, relaxin, and progesterone. All of these things are obviously going to impact our female reproductive cycle in one way or another, and once levels of these hormones reach homeostasis or deviate from homeostasis, it's going to trigger our negative feedback loop that's going to lead to the reduction in the production of gonadotropin-releasing hormone, or either gonadotropin-releasing hormone directly, or in the reduction in production of follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone.